Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey everybody, welcome to Paranormal Karen. I'm so excited for my guest today. Before we get to that, because I know I'll forget, October 31st, Halloween weekend, you can see me in Illinois doing a show at the Cambry House. So there'll be tarot reading. I'll be with the Southern Gypsies. It's going to be great. I probably have already put up an ad for it. Also, you can take my tarot class. Let's jump right in. So you guys may remember Peter Laws from the first season. I had a fabulous time talking to him. He's the Revrend who loves horror movies and understands us all. That's what I'm going to say. He has a new podcast, or semi-new, called Creepy Cove Community Church that I am a huge fan of. Peter, welcome to the show. How have you been?
Hello, Karen. It's I've been good, thanks. Good to be back.
You know, I have to tell you why I love this podcast, and then we will get to, and you have to tell me how you put it together, how it came together. It's so high quality, but it's like when I was talking to you before, you're like, yes, kind of quirky, but I think
kind of. It's full on insane. When I stop and think about it, it's totally unhinged, but it seems to work.
It does. And here's the thing, like I have recently, I hope folks know that I tape on Fridays, and of course the leaf blower comes on Friday, so hopefully you all can't hear that. So I have now two publicists that are like top publicists that are geniuses that are trying to put together everything I do, like stand up and paranormal and tarot. And I think my logo should just be comedian, tarot reader, marketing quagmire. That's what I think my byline should be.
I like it.
Yes, it's the beauty of when a person puts all their stuff together, whether it fits for other people or not. And that's why I think this is genius, because it's all you.
Yes, it is. And that's one of the reasons why I'm enjoying doing it, particularly because it's kind of using, like in life, you find that you have a small little kind of group of skills. You don't have many, but you have a small group of them. And then to find a project in which you can actually pretty much use them all is quite satisfying.
Yes. And so for folks, I jumped right in there. You're a reverend, you're a horror writer, you're an author, you do sermons, which is, how did you come up with this idea? Tell the folks what it is and how you did it.
Basically this podcast, the Creepy Cove Community Church podcast, is like an immersive horror-themed church service, which is broadcast from a fictional fishing town called Creepy Cove. And Creepy Cove is this kind of haunted, mysterious town where every horror movie has actually happened. And so the idea was basically during lockdown, the idea came to me because I was finding that because lots of churches had to meet indoors, as it were, or they weren't allowed to meet together, a lot of churches were going online and were providing a church experience that way. And I plugged into a few of those and found them actually to be a surprisingly meaningful experience. And I just thought, well, hang on a minute, what happens if I was to just kind of like make up a church? Like, it doesn't have to be a real church to be authentic. So why don't I make up a church that exists in a town that fulfills all the stuff I'm into? So spookiness, scariness, monsters and ghosts and whatever, but also to be a place where people come and, find a little bit of encouragement and hope. And so that was the idea behind the podcast. And so each podcast is presented as if this church is real. And it's a full service. It's sounds like a proper service with sound effects. And it's got, eerie, spooky meditations and prayers and Gothic sounding church hymns. And songs that sound more like kind of John Carpenter or something than something you would hear in church. And the idea behind it is, and I'm very kind of clear on this, but I can appreciate some people would not believe me. The idea is just totally not to convert people. Like, that's not where I'm at. And I've had that experience of Christians who just kind of, oh yeah, you start getting into a thing that I'm into. Like, you suddenly get into, I don't know, Star Wars, and you mount some sort of Star Wars themed service, and it's just some kind of ploy to convert me and get me on your side. And to me, I don't see sides. You see, I'm not really a kind of full-on evangelical type person in that way.
And that's the first
so,
episode.
Yeah, exactly. In the first episode, the first episode is interesting because we have guests in each service from people from the town, and of course, these people from the town are real, actual horror movie characters. So in the first service, Carrie White from Stephen King's Carrie White comes because she's excited to have an invitation to the school prom, and so the church are very excited for her, not knowing what maybe is about to happen at that prom, and that's the idea. It's like it's these are normal people in a sense, but they just happen to live in a world that's surrounded by horror. And to me, that kind of sounds like just normal life anyway. You know what I mean? Like, we're normal people surrounded by horror, and so both sets of people I just see as human beings searching for some sort of meaning, and so yeah, that it's designed to work as either just entertainment or as comedy or as a kind of genuine spiritual space for like a horror themed spirituality. But it's certainly supposed to be a safe space in which people can explore this stuff, and they don't have to worry that the aim is to get someone to step into Christianity, because it's just not. That's not the aim.
Exactly. My mom goes to a little church in upstate New York, and we go with her when we're there. And the minister pulled out a ventriloquist doll named Jake, and
oh wow,
I know.
This is creeping me out already.
I know. I have such mixed feelings because, like, my sister will call me and we'll be talking to my mom. We're like, "Was Jake at church? Was he there?" But it's, what, that's the guy's thing. So have at it. That this is another reason why I like it so much, because we do need our spirits lifted now. And your sermons in this are, just like you said, it's not preaching anything. In fact, I loved the first episode. There's one that I haven't listened to yet. And folks know we're taping this in August. It's out in September. But tell me your story about, because years ago, you would have never thought you were going to be a reverend.
No, I wouldn't. In fact, I was very antagonistic towards church and Christianity in particular. I was always open to the paranormal, because just the paranormal is always cool. I can't really see how that can never not be. But the problem with Christianity to me is it came with a very sturdy framework of rules, it seemed, and I just wasn't that type of person to want to follow those. And so I assumed that if I became a Christian, for a start, I couldn't be interested in ghosts and spooky things. I would have to stop watching gory zombie movies, and would basically have to become someone I wasn't. And that always put me in mind of films like The Stepford Wives, where like women in that film were just forced to become a kind of pseudo version of themselves, and they lost themselves. And I thought, well, why would I want to join Christianity and lose myself? But then, later I long story, but I ended up shockingly becoming a Christian in my early 20s, which was quite a surprise. And since then, I've discovered that there are flavors of Christianity. It's not just all one. So you do get the very strong, turn away from everything else and just go to church. But there's also a kind of more laid back, open-minded, I suppose you could say a Jesus-focused spirituality, which is more about, like encouraging people and lifting them up and sort of looking for the common ground, even in the people that are completely different to you. I interviewed the head of the Satanic Temple recently, and we were able to have a pretty decent conversation. And I'm not sitting there as a person going, right, you're on the bad side and I'm on the good side, and it's my job to swing in and rescue you. I'm to sound Oprah Winfrey about it, I'm kind of journeying through life, trying to work out how to cope with it. And I find spirituality is a way of doing that. So I'm sharing that, but through the focus of vampires, werewolves, and that stuff.
And our people, in fact, I'm going to pause this. Hang on. There we go. Folks are used to me pausing my podcast halfway through to close doors and windows.
No problem.
Well, you would be surprised, like how many people, and I feel like this is a relief to say, because spiritual people are sometimes afraid to say they dig Jesus. And especially one of my friends, she has another podcast, and we were talking on mine. We were like, yeah, we love the word of Jesus. We dig Jesus. Jesus is actually still in every single one of my meditations. Very unlike, but nothing else. Not that there's isn't other good stuff in the Bible, but there's actually pagans that have a Christ-oriented practice. So it's so good to see it represented that way.
Yeah, and that's the thing that drew me to Christianity. Really, it wasn't I wanted to follow a framework which kind of took the joy out of life. Obviously I wasn't attracted to that, but I did see in Jesus a very kind of progressive character who was like flipping the world system on its head. It was saying, it's not actually about how wonderful you are at singing or writing, or how successful you are at work, or how beautiful you are or handsome. There's something fundamentally valuable in and of yourself. Even just as a child, you are a valuable human being before you've contributed anything to the world. And I just found that quite a kind of beguiling message. And so, I am a Christian, but I'm also, and I don't, this kind of freaks some people out, but I'm also willing to be honest and to say, I could be totally wrong. I'm open to the possibility that there is no God, and that this Jesus character was just a guy from history who got misunderstood. I'm open to that. But I think most of us in life, we want to live, we want to have a worldview, and we want to live with our worldview. Yeah. And I suppose I've contemplated living a worldview in which the spiritual world doesn't exist. And even though I'm open to that being a logical possibility, I don't know if I can live with that worldview on a practical day-to-day basis.
Yeah. You know what? You want a worldview that tries to make you be better.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I've got atheist friends who would say for them, atheism makes them feel better. And I'm in support of that, if that's what's meaningful to them and it makes sense. So I get that. But for me, I find myself drawn to two contrasting odd things. I love scary, spooky, shocking, gothic horror, and I love beauty. Like I love corny beauty, I love really sometimes inauthentic beauty. Like I went to the Epcot Center and Disney World last year, and I absolutely loved it. I love that kind of, in a way that inauthentic, so like everyone's happy, and I don't know what it is. I'm drawn to those two things: extreme horror and corniness in some, and it's a bizarre.
It is, but
cocktail.
It's kind of what I feel like we're on this planet for, which is the whole emotional evolution. You know what I mean? Feel it all, do it all. That's the journey here. Even the negative or the good, or it's all about that. It's funny because, especially over here in the United States, I do some podcasts and I try not to scare people, but my whole attitude is like, knock it all down. We've done it wrong. I'm not a Democrat anymore. I'm not this and that. And then my friend called me a revolutionist, and I was like, I don't like that. And then he goes, well, Jesus was a revolutionist. And I was like, oh, maybe. Yeah, I guess he was, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I think the revolution of him is still felt today. Like I've just recorded another service for Creepy Cove, which is a child special. So in that, we have the kids from Children of the Corn, Stephen King film. They come and sing a lovely song at the end where they've decided to not put their parents' hands in blenders anymore, and these sorts of like kind things. And it's all about children, but in that. So in the sermony bit, and I always say in the podcast, if you're not interested in this, just check your Twitter during this, or I provide I provide chapter skip. So if people just want to hear the fun stuff and just want to skip over prayers and sermons, they can. That's up to them. But in that sermon, I talked about how Jesus dealt with children and how he was quite a revolutionary in the sense that he made children people, as it were. And in the ancient world, up until that point, they were just seen as their worth was just based on their future contribution to the family. And then Jesus goes, no, if you want to be great, be like this little kid.
Wow.
And there's these little revolutions that you don't realize until you think about it. Like, we now value children in and of themselves as just valuable people. We don't say, well, once you get making a job, then we'll consider looking after you. No, we just look after kids and we value them for who they are. And but that wasn't always the case, or even humility wasn't necessarily seen as a virtue, I think, in the past. Whereas now we tend to see humility as something that matters. If I come out and say like, oh, Karen, you've got to listen to my podcast because it really is the best podcast you'll ever hear. It's way better than yours. That's horrible. That people don't like that.
Yeah.
And you say, well, why don't you like that? And there was a time when in our culture, in ancient culture, it was about like the biggest crown you would have or whatever. But this Jesus guy,
I knew where you were going.
Yeah.
With the crown.
Yeah, it's like that.
Reverend. That is it's funny to watch the evolution of people because the difference between confidence and arrogance or self-esteem is all a very fine line. And even in comedy, we all know that you have the artist and then you have kind of the BS artist that is more of a salesperson, which doesn't make it any less. If people are laughing, they're laughing and go get them. But that is interesting that humility is back. But isn't that what COVID did to all of us?
Well, yes, in a sense, it certainly did. Although then it introduced in some ways, a false sense of equality, I think. So, you would have a situation where, you might have very kind of rich celebrities saying, we're all in this together. This is the great leveler, I think Madonna said. But actually, it's not the great leveler if you're living in a beautiful big mansion and quarantining there, as opposed to the family who have got like 6 kids and they're cramming into a small room and they can't afford to live anymore because they've lost their job. So I do think lockdown has taught some pretty interesting messages, but whether or not we're going to learn them, I don't know.
Yeah, I felt like my intuition and sort of what I tell my clients is lockdown was also about look in the mirror. Look in the mirror and who are you and what haven't you changed and what aren't you doing? What dreams aren't you following? And I feel like, Peter, I could not have been made more errors or, it was almost like, oh yeah, you got to fix that. It just is an interesting thing. Someone told me yesterday that literally the hospitals are saying there has been a huge drop in prematurely born babies.
Oh, really?
Like that's how I'm going to look that up because I think she sent it to me because I said, send me that article because that's how much of a rush we were in.
Yeah.
Like that, like we were having our babies faster because we just, I don't know. It was pretty amazing, but it right now, so we're not allowed to go to the UK because our president is a genius. How is everything there?
Well, here in the UK, it's pretty intense at times. We still have the same kind of issues as the rest of the world, but certainly when it comes to masks, for example, there isn't really a massive, widespread rejection of masks as a sign of kind of political submission, whereas when I chat to some of my American friends, particularly if they're connected with the Christian world, they tend to see that there's a culture war going on, perhaps in America, over this idea of wearing a mask. I don't see that as much here, but that's crazy. It's a really interesting topic. Funnily enough, with my Creepy Cove Community Church thing, I also, this sounds like a plug, which I suppose it is, but
no, keep going. I love it.
It's connected. With the Creepy Cove stuff, I also have this Patreon program where people, if they want to keep the show free, but also get loads of extra content, they can become patrons. And with that, I have a weekly podcast called the Peter Laws Podcast, which basically explores, paranormal news and stuff like that. But there is a section in that called Holy Moly, where I look at the scary, bizarre stuff that's going on in the Christian world today. And in the last episode, I looked at this thing to do with masks and how groups of Christians are trying to relate it to the book of Revelation, where there's some verses in Revelation that talk about, at the end of days, people will be given a mark of the beast, and they will not be able to kind of buy or trade in shops and stuff.
Yeah, I think the mark of the beast is Botox. And,
yes, exactly.
That's the only way you're going to get people to take it in Hollywood, is if it comes with Botox.
Yeah, completely. But that sort of stuff is not, I don't see people talking in those sorts of terms in England, but we do have the big kind of 5G conspiracy stuff. People do talk about that here.
Well, that's a little bit my tag, but this is all, and hang on one second, folks. We're going to be right back. See, Peter, I could talk to you forever. Okay, hold on. Hey, everybody, it's me doing an ad for me. That's right. I keep forgetting to say this at the end, so I had to take out an ad on my own podcast. First of all, thanks for listening, and I love all your feedback. If you have a comment or a story or just want to say hi, email me at karenrontowski@gmail.com. Also, go to karenrontowski.com or paranormalkaren.com, and you can get my tarot class. That's right. It took me 2 years to put it together. It's 8 classes, about an hour each. You will be reading tarot by the end. While you're there, sign up for my email list. Everyone should do this. I only send out an email about every 2 to 3 months, and it's filled with typos and misspellings, so I haven't been kidnapped. And that's the best way to keep up on comedy dates and whatever is new. While you're there, you can book a 30 or 60-minute tarot reading, or you can get a gift certificate for somebody else. I got a little bit of merch left. If you want a Paranormal Karen Shungite sticker for your phone to make it safer, you can email me about that. Or I now sell Paranormal Karen reusable straws. You take them with you wherever you go. Maybe you're doing cocaine with someone that doesn't look like they're clean. Boom, you got your own straw. karenrontowski.com. Okay, yeah, I don't understand. There seems to be this desire in this country to bring on end of days, and because it comes up all the time. And the mask thing, because here's the thing, Peter, I look at all the conspiracy theories, and this is the problem right now, is they're all getting piled on. Like, I am against 5G towers. I don't want them. I'm right. But then someone adds this to it, and Bill Gates, and then the end of the world, and now you're so far. I think the misinformation is sort of like, we don't want you talking about the towers. We're going to throw it all on so that you sound so crazy by the end of it. But I don't, I'll just say this. I don't understand it's almost like there's 2 separate timelines that Trump is on. There's the one that we see or I see, and then there's the ones that everybody else is seeing, because this rampant misinformation, the QAnon, they think he's undercover to undo huge sex trafficking rings. And I can't even follow that, like that horrible tape with him with Jeffrey Epstein. They said that's when he was undercover. He was and you can't, they've created some hero that told them not to wear a mask, and there's no penetrating that belief system. So we all want to move there now. Back to you guys.
Well, we have our challenges too, but yeah, I mean, I'd say that England is as quirky and as strange and as dysfunctional and as beautiful as anywhere else, and I do sometimes meet English people who can be dismissive of America, and I don't really understand that, because I've always loved America. I've always been a huge fan of American culture and the kind of the American spirit, as it were. And I don't know if that's got anything to do with my enjoyment of places like Epcot and those sorts of places, where I don't have a problem with like somebody coming up to me and saying, "Have a nice day." And like, even if they don't mean it, I don't care if they don't mean it. The thought of it means something to me. Whereas in Britain, it's like, well, they don't even mean it. They're probably getting paid to do that.
Well,
so there's this desire for pure authenticity.
Well, I think you want to know people in the world. You have this curiosity, which it's missing so much. And I love my country. We have some great stuff. And I think my friend describes it best. He's like, these other countries have been there forever. We're still new. We're like the drunk kid in the bar swinging the beer bottle around, who wants to fight? And these other countries are like the old men going, oh, let's just let him, he'll pass out in a minute.
Yeah.
But it's because America has some wonderful things, but this, that we are a reality show. We are the reality show, bring in the conflict and make it crazy. But it's so weird because I have no idea where this started, but Peter, I'm obsessed with Iran. Have you, because you can go to Iran. Have you ever been to Iran?
I haven't been to Iran, no.
Okay, so folks, this is a preview of, we're going to be looking into Iranian mythology and stuff. I started watching all these YouTubes about it, and they say they are the most friendliest people in the world, like the opposite problem of what you would think, like you kind of can't get them to stop talking to you. And they're like, come to my house for dinner. And they literally mean come to my house for dinner. And, and so whatever government's arguing, because I looked it up, I was like, can Americans go there? And it was like, the American embassy was pushed into Switzerland. So I guess we don't even have a ground game there. But the people love Americans. And I'm sure this is worse than this, but I had to laugh because a woman was she wrote an article, Can a Woman Go Travel Alone in Iran? And she talked about sexual harassment. And she said her experience was a man walked up to her and said, will you go to bed with me tonight? And she said no. And he said, okay, well, welcome to Iran, and I hope you enjoy my country. And I thought, I don't think she understands sexual harassment because that's a good day in LA. We look for that in LA.
Damn me, that's
yes. But I know a lot of the tapes I watch are people from England or Ireland going to Iran. So that was the only reason that I brought it up. But people everywhere. Nice.
Well, people to me are people are broken people in some ways and brilliant people, and this is the thing that I think we kind of forget especially if we connect with another person and they let us down, and how easy I think the human psyche can just sort of switch off another person because we have that sense of disconnect. So an example would be, I remember watching the news one night and I saw this it was like a gang fight in London, and this guy this teenage boy had gone into a store and tried to shoot someone, and they missed and hit a little girl and killed this little girl. And I think a fair enough and quite right response was like, you scumbag, how could you do that? That poor little girl was in there. And my instant sort of reaction is sort of judgment and anger, and maybe even some people would clutch at things like that's pure evil or whatever. But I wouldn't, because then I have to slow down and go, okay, just a second. What would I do if the kid who shot the gun was my son?
Right.
How would that change this scenario? Would it? And I'd be like, well, yes, of course it would change it for me, because then I'd be asking questions. Then I'd be like, why did you do this? What drove you to this? And I think that's what I try to do with just everybody in life. I think they call it the kind of one more fact scenario, in that, even someone you think is Donald Trump, I don't know, like people who are so easy to dismiss. And I'm not defending this guy here, but I'm trying to think of a good example of people who.
I know what you mean. He can't. I don't want to say he's doing the best he can. He doesn't have the emotional tool. I don't know. Now I'm getting worse. But I know what you mean. I said that to a friend of mine that's a comic, and I said, he's from New York, and I said, does anybody have a good Donald Trump story? And he said, I do. So there's one. One.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's like, well, even Hitler probably opened the door for someone one day and let little Eddie through. But I suppose he was probably not a great example. But I guess the challenge is for me is to look at everybody in three dimensions if I can, and to get suspicious when my mind starts slotting people into categories instantly in the one-dimensional zone. And that's where I get nervous, because I don't think that's how humanity survives, by slotting each other into categories like that.
And throwing them in prison.
Well, yeah. Well, actually, and I would add to that as well, that this scenario, this kind of approach, does not do away with justice and law and order. So, like the kid I talked about, like if it was my son and he shot a girl dead, I'd be like, you need to pay for that. Like there has to be some sort of recompense. So I'm not suggesting that let all serial killers go free and sort of say, well, Jesus loves you. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what forgiveness is. It's far more nuanced than that. Right. But it's recognizing that the people who cause pain in life sometimes cause pain because of their pain, and what happened to that person to draw them to that. So yeah. That sounds very Oprah Winfrey. But this is what I like. And this is why I literally listen to your podcast before I go to bed. Because
that's nice. You know what? Sometimes you just need that nice, easy, it's like you did the one on vulnerability, which is like that's my button. I am not good. Was vulnerability. Right. And my friend always says, well, when you're coming from a space of love, you're coming from a space of vulnerability. But it's almost like that word is like I kind of try to intellect or figure it out. And I loved your sermon on it, which I think was in the second or third.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I've never heard anyone talk about that in a church service.
Yeah, and because sometimes vulnerability within Christian circles is seen as a weakness, which I think is ridiculous when Jesus himself, comes as an embryo, like the most vulnerable thing you can think of. He could have come like strutting out the desert on a kind of, like a motorized sort of tank or something, saying, come on, boys, we're going to do this. He could have easily done that, but he didn't. He comes as this embryo that becomes a baby that is having to be looked after for 9 months, and then lives 30 years in relative obscurity as a kind of random carpenter, and then has 3 years of fame, if you will, and then dies, like executed publicly as a loser. And so at the heart of Christianity, there's this kind of this saying, there's something about vulnerability and being low at times that can be powerful, but you don't see that reflected sometimes in Christianity. So you'll get sermons, for example, where preachers would not stand up and say, you know what, sometimes I don't believe in God, or sometimes I don't know, watch porn, or sometimes I am envious, or I stole something from work once. I don't know. I'm trying to think of things. People don't want to be raw.
Yes. And, that's where comedy stand-up can come in, too.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
To plug my business. It's funny. I had a friend that he used to tell a joke, and he used to say, Jesus was a carpenter, but you never really hear about him making anything. So I figure he worked for the city. Yeah, quite possibly. Yes. And it's funny because this is a little bit gross, but I tell this sometimes. I saw a comedian, and he's so funny. His name is Ian Bagg, and he just stops in the middle of his show, and he goes, all right, pardon my language, who shit their pants? And the crowd goes insane. And I'm sitting there thinking, what is this about? And then I realize probably everyone in the crowd has done that, and he just took the shame out of it.
Yeah, completely.
He just went, we're just people, we all do it. And I was like, wow, interesting how that's sort of supposed to be my job take the shame out of it.
Yeah, I love, and that is one of the great things about comedy. And that's why comedy is a vital function, I think, of the human condition. You've got to be able to laugh at even the worst things. I think you've got to be able to laugh at, especially the worst things sometimes. Yeah. So it really is needed, and that's why for me, like I have no issue with like laughing at blasphemous things. But some people will come up to me. I get bored of saying this, and they'll go, "Oh, you probably won't like this because it's got swearing in, or it like mocks Jesus or something." Yeah, like I couldn't care less, honestly. And like I think there was people were up in arms recently because there's a film being made where Jesus is being depicted as a lesbian woman, and people like some people's like heads are spinning on that, thinking, "Oh my word, that has kind of trampled on God" or something like that. I just don't care. Like, I find all angles really interesting.
Well,
So
that's fucking
I don't
great,
mind.
Peter.
Yes, thank you. Oh, bless you for that.
It is funny how it is with time, because I have a joke that Hitler is like, it's almost the irony of how horrible Hitler was. Now he's almost in every comedy show. He comes up somewhere. He's like the great yardstick of how we measure things. And there's movies made making fun of him.
Mm-hmm.
I just love that. So now let's make a lot more people mad, Peter.
Go on.
Wouldn't Jesus actually be Middle Eastern or black? If we go back to where he's from. Okay. And I have a big thing for Middle Eastern men. So
you probably have the hots for him then, I reckon.
Well, except they really whited him up a lot over here. In fact, when I go to Utah, every time I go to Utah, there's another picture and I go, wow, he's getting whiter and bluer eyes, and it's like this.
He looks like a sort of bass player from a kind of middle of the road band or something. But that's not what he would have looked like. He would have been really out of place, actually, if he had looked, like you see him in films and particularly in paintings. So yeah, completely Middle Eastern, and it freaks me out to think that people would be shocked by that, and the thought that he could not be a white person.
Right.
And that just indicates some sort of insecurity in them and how culture bound their faith is.
Right. And I do have to be guilty of when the lead in The Walking Dead was talking off screen and had an English accent. I did feel a little disappointed. I definitely
thought he was American. Yeah. Yeah, you feel shortchanged there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's loads. There's so many English actors and actresses that seem to do American parts. I'd be ticked off with that, I suppose, if I was an actor in America.
Well, you know what? I mean, and now a lot of English shows are coming over, but you guys got it down. Like there's some shows on now. I love that vampire show. Did you ever see the one, What We Do in the Shadows?
Oh, yes, that's fantastic.
And
I love that.
It's not. If somebody in Hollywood had done that wrong and casted all these cookie cutter 20-year-olds, it wouldn't be. But those, I think especially that guy is English. I think the girl's Russian, and they just picked the best. Which to me, I always see that in the English shows.
Oh, is that Matt Berry, the actor Matt Berry? Maybe
I think
the one who plays. Yeah, he lives quite near me. I walked past his house the other day.
Oh, how funny! He's the stuffy one. Yeah, so funny. But I think I admire England a lot, but I think you guys were always about the talent, not the looks, and then Hollywood came along and spun that a little bit.
Well, hang on a minute. What are you saying there? Are you seeing that we're great actors? We're just hideously grotesque. Yeah.
Oh no, you have your. I see Marcella and Luther. So yes. But you sing in this too. You sing hymns in this.
Yeah, that is crazy, right? But I used to, when I was a teenager, my dream was to be a film composer, and so I like writing music, and I used to be in bands, and I toured with a band for a year once in sort of Germany and Britain for a while, which was a lot of fun. And but since I started becoming an author and writing horror novels and stuff, I hadn't done music in ages, and then all of a sudden with this podcast, I thought, well, hang on a minute, it's a church service, got to get some scary sounding gothic hymns in there. And so, back into kind of songwriting again. And I play various instruments, so I'm able to do everything myself. And it's fun. Yeah, it's fun to do that.
It's fun. It's everything you are. It's fantastic. And was there one that I was listening to it and I thought, is this a real hymn that you put your own music to?
Yes. So I've, every now and again, I'll take a public domain, so I don't get sued, a public domain old hymn, and sort of try and make it sound scary or weird. And then I'll also write my own songs that explore, scary things, and a sort of church song, like a worship song, but which is about werewolves or stuff like that. So yeah, I quite like that side of it, and it's good because I'm still doing the writing stuff as well alongside that, because I've just had a new book come out about demonic possession, which is fun. But as well as that, it's good to be able to do that, and then turn around and grab the guitar and then make up a vampire song.
See, you did it, people. Do you listen? What you pick the things you do and put them together, and don't worry what anyone else thinks, and you get genius. So you know what? We're at a perfect spot. I want to take a break. I want to talk about your demonic book and the phrase pure evil. Hold on, folks. Psychic medium and buddy of mine, Terry Huberman, is with me today. Terry, you've given me so many great readings and healings, and now you've got everything together in one package. Tell me about that.
I sure do. So this package has energy healings, readings, and coaching.
Coaching, that's the best. And people, they buy the package. You give them coaching once a week?
Yeah, so we meet online once a week, and in between, there's support as well.
And who would this be for?
This is really for folks who are in indecision, needing to get into their intuition because they're blocked or stuck. They need to move forward. And so we explore what the root causes of the problems are.
And helps them get out of their own way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Terrific. And what can they expect from this?
Sure. So moving from anxiousness to confidence, accessing their freedom, joy, and security, and really being in alignment with themselves so they have that clear direction, so they know, aha, this is what I need to do next to reach my goals.
So now there's something that's free so people can talk to you and see if this is for them.
Yeah, absolutely. On my website, terryhuberman.com, there is a page where you can click, and it's the intuitive coaching package. And there is a button there that says schedule a free call. So you go ahead, schedule it. We'll get on a call and you can learn more about this program, and we'll see if this is a good fit for you or not.
See if there's chemistry.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's an odd date.
terryhuberman.com, TerrieHuberman. I highly recommend it, folks. Okay. So, you know, it's you mentioned the phrase pure evil, which there was a graphic novel that I read years ago, and I think they made it, I think it's on Netflix now, but it's called My Friend Dahmer, and it's about a guy that was a friend of Jeffrey Dahmer. And I have to say, when you really see something done well, you have a certain amount of compassion for quote unquote pure evil, or people that are pushed so far, and for mental illness. So I think it is a pretty, I wonder, is there anything you think would be pure evil, or a person that's pure evil?
This is the sort of question which I think is a very good one, but the answer to it can frustrate. Because my answer is, I think ultimately there are just human beings who get damaged in one way or another, be that biologically or through their nurture. And they end up doing things that the acts themselves certainly are what you might call evil. But if that translates to the sort of mythologizing of them as becoming like that serial killer is evil incarnate, that's where I get jumpy. Because I think the people who do these things, and they are evil. I mean, they are shocking acts. The word evil is a slippery one. That they are shocking and disgusting acts and should be punished, should be stopped. But the actual people themselves, I really don't think they are purely evil. I think that's normally something to do with the makeup of their brain or the chemistry. But you have to keep saying, like, this stuff is shocking and these murders are shocking. At the moment, I was just doing something for my podcast about a vampire murder that happened in 2001 in Wales, where a young teenager decided he really believed he was going to become a vampire. And so he broke into an old lady's house and cut out her heart and drank her blood. And it's just, it's next level stuff, and people are talking about him as if he was pure evil. But then he had some sort of schizophrenia. He genuinely believed that this would make him a vampire. Like, I don't think that way, and that's why I don't kill old ladies, and drink their blood. Because I don't want to escape the world by becoming a mythical vampire, because I happen to have a brain that understands the context of that and that it's not real. But for someone who thinks it's real, again, it's all back to the same thing as what would I do if Jeffrey Dahmer was my son?
Right.
I would despise the acts and I'd want him to face the full force of the law, but there would still be questions before I dismissed him.
Right. And also, if you did believe these things were real, my question is, why a vampire? That is the least attractive of all the things. That sounds like no fun. You got to stay inside. You need a coffin. No fun. You got to live forever. Well, who wants that?
That's why you've got to move to Alaska and 30 days of night and start strutting around in the daytime.
Exactly. This is always a weird conversation but my parents, when they before, now they're in assisted living, but they at one point lived in a place and they shared a duplex, and the family next to them was a older lady and her son was maybe 40, and he had done his time, or he was accused, and he was a pedophile. There was no could not have been better to my parents when they needed something. Genuinely nice guy. And only once there was an incident where another neighbor had their kids out and wasn't watching, and my mother caught him talking to the kids, and she said, you got to go home. She sent the kids home, and she said he didn't look like the same guy she knew, that it was almost like something kind of came over him. So
that's interesting.
He can't, not like he was possessed, but like he was having trouble controlling himself.
Which is scary. And again, it's like if I was, if something happened to my kids, for example, like all of this kind of hopefully nuanced thinking would go out the window. I'd want to kill a guy.
Right.
And I really would want to cause extreme damage to that person. And I don't think that's necessarily a wrong reaction, by the way. I think it's perfectly natural. I'm just trying to suggest that we kind of slow down and think, how does that person need punishment but also needs help? And I think the biggest goal, surely, of the justice system is rehabilitation, is to try and help a person ultimately, as well as punish them. I don't think the end goal is purely just, maybe it is in certain crimes.
Well, you know what? We never have
actually thinking about it.
We never have a light conversation, Peter. We always go right to
we've went to some dark places, man. Like, this is a Friday. Let's lighten it up a bit.
This is what I do to people. Oh my God. Yes, and also, I mean, obviously, somehow the prison system isn't helping. But so, what is your book about demonic possession? Is it a fiction?
Yeah, this is fiction. So, I mean, I do write nonfiction. I have a nonfiction book out called The Frighteners: Why We Love Monsters, Ghosts, Death, and Gore. But I'm more well known for my fiction. And so I've just had a new fiction book come out called Possessed, and it's part of the Matt Hunter crime series. So Matt Hunter, basically, the main character, is a church minister now turned atheist college professor who helps the police solve religiously motivated or occult related murder. And so in this book, he's embroiled in the crazy world of demonic possession and exorcism.
How is this not a TV show yet, Peter? Even in the description.
Well, yes. Well, you tell me. I'll have to get it on the radar of people. I know that some people have sort of expressed an interest in it, but we'll never know. We'll see what happens. But it hasn't been out for that long. But this book, basically, it explores something that's going on in the world now, which is an increased demand for exorcisms and people wanting to go through that ritual, which I found really interesting.
Well, okay. So we're in the whole other topic there. First of all, there's an English show that was only 6 episodes called Apparitions, about a Catholic.
Oh yeah.
Did you see it?
No, but I know of it.
Oh my God, you got to watch it. Everyone, it's called Apparitions. You got to look for it a little bit, but it's only 6 episodes. It was pretty amazing. And since I spoke with you, I don't talk about this much, or I either don't say I don't talk about it much and do talk about it much, but I did end up in an investigation once that I believe was demonic, and it.
Okay.
and there was a lot of problems after. And it was, for all these people that I kind of just want to say, you have no idea. People that throw these terms around, the whole feeling was unlike anything. I don't ever want to feel it again. I would know what it was.
Right.
It was not, that's pure evil. And I get, a human can't do that.
Yeah. And this is a good point where you're saying, so even in the case of someone who was demonically possessed, say, the person themselves become this kind of vessel, as it were, for this evil force. And so the pure evil is not necessarily aimed at the person themselves. It's aimed at the kind of the evil spirit, as it were, that's with them. So, I'm a Christian, so I'm open, obviously, to the idea of not only God, but of the devil and of the demonic realm. And that's certainly what my novels explore. They're crime fiction books, really. They're in the crime fiction section of bookshops. But they ask the question, what happens if behind every crime and behind every tragedy is a kind of demonic network, a kind of conspiracy, which I just like get a kick out of. I'm not saying I necessarily believe that's the case at all times, but you're right. I'm open-minded about the potential of these things, but equally, perhaps more so, I'm cautious about the risks of misdiagnosing mental health conditions as possession.
And that's funny. If you ever have a podcast where you interview people, I'm going to introduce you to my friend Tommy, who is a demonologist who's been on this show. And what people don't understand, first of all, he's the most upbeat, fun guy. He's cool. Like about keep that vibration high. Let's all have, and he's so intelligent and has studied this for years. Well, people, because they hear the podcast, they come to me and they think there's something in their place or a demon or something.
Right.
Which it could, when people call me with haunted stuff, usually I can point them in the right direction. But I talk to him and through time, we finally got a process that someone just came to me and I was like, okay, you have to fill out this questionnaire and we will get back to you. And then you have to do this and we will get back. Like I sort of have to do a little deflecting before Tommy can't go into everybody that thinks there's if it's mental illness, it's literally 3 to 4 steps. They will bail before they want to show. Is this guy coming to my house? Is there, and it's like, when someone really has something going, Tommy's always like, see, Karen, they fall out. If it's really going on, they are ready for the process. So you are right. And he has a lot of mental illness questions. And he used to have therapists that he could attach to cases, which I was like, let me look for one of those for you, because you're right. It's an easy out. It's not me. It's this thing that's possessing me.
Yeah, and you can see the attraction in that, actually, and that's one of the reasons. And I talk about this in my novel because the main character is cynical about these things. So he presents the rational point of view, as it were, whereas the other characters are saying, no, this is really demonic, because it's a murder case that starts at the beginning and then it gets totally out of hand with loads of demons going on at the end. But the idea of that book is trying to say the reason why we're having an explosion in many ways of people asking for exorcism these days is related to mental health, because there's something kind of about a mental health label that can be given to you, which is almost like it tattoos itself on you personally. And so if the doctor says to you, right, okay, you are bipolar, yeah, you are manic depressive or whatever, you feel like, oh, that's me, that's who I am. In the same way as sometimes when you're a teenager and you get a spot on your face, you can feel much more embarrassed and self-conscious about that than you do if you get a cut on your face from an accident, because you feel, oh, well, that wasn't my fault. That was external, but the spot is my fault because it's coming from inside me, and I feel more conscious about that. And so people with these given these labels, they feel like, oh, well, that's me for the rest of my life then. Whereas there's this system that comes along and says, well, what happens if it's not you? What happens if it's a foreign invader that is in you for a while, and there's a ritual that can get rid of it? As dangerous as that could be, of course, with all those caveats, psychologically, that's actually quite attractive to some people, because it it puts the blame on the demon. And at the heart of that, and this is what Matt Hunter's so furious at, he's saying the reason why people are attracted by this is because we're so crap at dealing with mental health that we talk about it in terms of blame, and we shouldn't do that.
Right.
It's like if someone suffers from mental health, there's no one to blame, not a demon, not yourself, but what happens is people are looking for blame, and they either blame themselves for this or the devil.
Yeah, I'll tell you that one case that was real, even the way the person came to me, and it was not, it was so different. It was so awful, Peter. But the other thing about labels is then people get married to them, and then the answer is a prescription. I'm on this now.
Yeah.
And I hate it when I'm reading for people when I give out labels and they're too extreme. Like I always say, bipolar and narcissism are the two terms that seem to be flying around without any variation, without, someone's moody or, they're easily upset. Do you believe there's I feel like there's a big variety between ghost and demon. Does that fall into your category at all, or haven't thought about it?
No, I have thought about it, and I think there probably is a difference. But where I do differ from many Christians I know is that I believe that it is possible that there are ghosts and demons, whereas in many evangelical circles there is no such thing as ghosts at all. They're all demons. And so the point of view is, the point of view is like you die, you go straight to heaven or hell, and there's no hanging about. And that's why Catholics actually are a little bit more open to the kind of the concept of ghosts, because they have this inbuilt sort of purgatorial section where people are not quite there and not quite here. and so there's a more of an openness. But if you believe in the strict evangelical view, if you die tonight, you will face Christ instantly. And where will you be, heaven or hell? Ghosts just don't fit into that framework. And so you'll find that if you talk about ghosts to very strong evangelicals, they will look at you and say that you are not talking to your grandma on the Ouija board, or you're not contacting spirits through anything, or through you are in cahoots with the demonic. I've been accused of having a demon before, a couple of times.
Really?
Radio presenter. Once I did an interview on radio once, and it turned out the woman was a Christian. And previously, before I'd arrived, I found this out later. She'd emailed around loads of people, and happened to have emailed a friend of mine who she didn't know I knew. And said, could you please pray for me? Because there's this guy called Peter Lawson, and he's a Christian, and he really likes horror films, and that cannot be possible. And so therefore, I'm pretty sure he's going to bring the devil in with him. Oh, wow. And so throughout the whole meeting, she thought I was demonically possessed. I mean, I was wearing a goat's head mask at the time, but that's no, I wasn't really. But and then that happened as well. Actually, this was a bit more spooky. This one. When I was a teenager, and it's the topic of my second novel called Unleashed, which I think really scared me, actually, writing this novel. That was about poltergeists. And when I was young, me and my friends went on ghost hunts, and a few of us saw what looked like a kind of weird animal human hybrid thing standing on a roof in this abandoned asylum thing that we broke into. Search for ghosts, and it was really quite frightening. It was almost like a rabbit stroke human on its hind legs. And anyway, we ran, and then I was
that, yeah.
I was scared of that, but then I ran back because I thought, hang on a minute, this is interesting. This could be proof of an afterlife or whatever. And so I ran back, and it had gone. But then years later, I'd always thought about this, and I described it as the black rabbit. And this was long before Donnie Darko and all that stuff. I just described it that way. And I went to a church when I first became a Christian, and the guy, the minister said, we need you to come and, I think, pray for forgiveness for everything you feel you've ever done wrong. I'm like, for real? He's like, yeah. So me, him, and this other woman sat in the church one day, and I went there to pray And I said sorry for anything I could think of. And I mean anything. I'd never been that frank with anyone in my life. I told them everything I could think of. But the journey to that place was weird because I kept having kind of visions of scary things enter my head. I felt like there were sort of insects on me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, and I honestly couldn't tell, is this psychological or is this spiritual? I don't know. And anyway, I did this, prayed with these guys. I was quite upset actually, because it was quite an upsetting moment, like crying and stuff. I wasn't possessed. I'm not saying I was like possessed or anything.
No, but once you get your mind into that arena, it seems like, wait a minute, what is around and are things here? And yeah, it's easy to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I did this prayer thing. And then afterwards I finished and the minister says, I'm so glad you agreed to come, because when you first came to the church, there was this tall black thing walking with you all the time.
Yeah. You know what? See, okay.
And I was like, that's my girlfriend. What are you talking about? No, it's like, no, he was saying, no, I felt there was this thing with you. And again, I wasn't sure what he meant, but then I thought, okay. And it'd gone. And then about 2 weeks later, I was singing in a nightclub to get a bit extra money because I was a student at the time. And it was this glitzy kind of Blackpool nightclub, like start spreading the news, all that sort of corny stuff with spangles and stuff like that. And I went in the hotel room that night, and this was about 2 weeks after, I think. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I saw this thing in my room, this kind of black rabbit thing. And again, it's probably a hypnagogic hallucination, like half asleep. But it always interested me. And that's why I wrote the book Unleashed, because it specifically explores that whole thing and imagining what happens if you were haunted by that thing for the rest of your life. So,
well, all my listeners know right now I'm about to explode. Because, and next year, Peter, you will see my comedy special that will come out next year about how I had an attachment, which in my mind looked like a man in a bunny suit.
No. You've just given me a shiver there. Are you kidding?
I can tell you.
Holy crap.
This falls into the Fae category, and you want to research a puka.
Puka.
Yes, and it's two different. Yes, it's two different ways: Puka or Pook. And in fact, if I find it, there is.
I just saw a picture of it.
That's it, right?
Yeah, that's freaky. It's the one I'm looking at is a little bit more furry, but that's giving me a.
Yes, and I have one also, but it's not attached. But here is what's. Yours was, there's a whole, I just did actually with another English lady a podcast a little bit ago about fae or fairies and how different they are. And my story was because we were messing around with witchcraft in my house and something came in. Yeah. And got attached to me. Again, not demonic, not good, but that's a whole different thing. And she thought, because I saw this thing very clearly, and someone said, you got to communicate with it, which was the wrong thing to do, because then I let it in. But the lady that I talked to, that I did the podcast with, talked to me off mic, and she thought that one was protecting me, and I had the wrong name for it. But it's a great comedy story, so I'm not changing it. But that's fascinating. Isn't it amazing how it all clicks together?
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird, right? Because I did quite a lot of research for writing this novel, and I was looking up kind of like rabbit mythology and stuff, and it's so weird that I did not find this thing. I never heard of it.
Yeah, it's I got
Puka.
Fairies and fae are kind of my obsession. But and actually it was very funny because when I was talking to this lady, she was saying how a puka might not be in California, that might not be indigenous to my area, but it's Ireland and it could be yours. So there, now I've terrified you. How's that?
Well, I mean, my mum did a DNA test recently. I got for her birthday, not because I thought she'd killed anyone, but because she might have. But one of these ancestry things where you try to find your DNA, your history, and it was Ireland.
Wow.
Was where the history was from. But so yeah, and this puka thing seems to be from sort of Celtic folklore. But so for me, this is both cool, spooky, and also my cynicism kicks in as well, all at the same time. And this bundle of reactions to this and all things, I've just learned to accept as that's who I am, rather than I have to choose. So I have to choose God either exists or not. I have to choose the puka is real or not. You just have to choose what you believe. And I think we're all a mixture of complicated things, and some people fall one way or the other. And I find myself open-minded to both sides, which is where I am.
And you proceed without fear. And okay, so I've kept you long again. I always do this, but two things I wrote.
It's a pleasure.
Another thing, and it's very funny because I feel like this is all my woo-woo tarot stuff. The sort of the veil between the worlds is getting thinner, and there's a lot of activity, which also fits with your book on people thinking it's demonic. But there's a lot going on, and I was sort of looking for a particular thing to do before I read my tarot. Before each client, I kind of was like, I need to get into a theme. And through automatic writing or speaking with my guides or whatever, they gave me 2 questions to ask myself before every reading. And every reading, I hear a voice say, "Who are you?" And I say, "I'm Karen Rontowski." And they say, "Where are you?" And I say, "I'm in my home my beautiful home that I have manifested and created." And I don't exactly know what that's about, but I feel like the initial question of "Who are you?" was the important one, because that's what, that's the fear of, if you were ever really possessed, is losing who you are. So before I start this work, I say who I am. And the other weird thing, Peter, I'll call it a download or a piece of information. One day in my apartment, I got this information that someone kept saying, "Don't meditate, pray." And I was like, did I do something wrong? Is there someone? Why do I pray? And then I was watching the show on the Skinwalker Ranch, and what they said was that whenever someone meditated, activity came. But when someone prayed, it was more like it was the same energy doing the same thing, but prayer formed as more of a shield.
Oh, interesting.
That's just my theory. That's all my craziness going on over here in Rontowski land.
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it? The whole bundle of it all.
Yeah, I could be mentally ill, but don't give me a label. You couldn't give me a label. Well, Peter, tell everyone where to find your book, where to find you, and I have to say this, and this usually is a terrible thing to say, but it's great. The podcast is for everyone. In the car, with your kids, with your husband, with your wife. It just is that good.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, so you can find Creepy Cove Community Church. Where all normal podcasts are. So it's available in all the normal places, or just ask Alexa. Play Creepy Cove Community Church. But you can find out more about me at peterlaws.co.uk. If you're interested in the Patreon, which has lots of extras, including my weekly podcast and Creepy Cove plectrums and all sorts of crazy stuff, then you can visit patreon.com/Creepy Cove. And my books are out in shops. Although in America, I don't think my novels are in stores, but my nonfiction book, The Frighteners, is, and so that's available in shops over there. And every once in a while on Facebook, I see you have an article in 14. Oh yes, so I write a monthly column for them. So I've been regularly writing for the 14 Times since about 10 years now, which is great. So I love writing for them, and it's a big privilege because it's a pretty cool magazine.
Well, it's our privilege to have you on the show. Wow, I'm getting great with those takeouts.
Smooth.
Well, thank you again, Peter. This is wonderful. Folks, all the show notes will have all the links that you want to listen to. And I hope I see you all Halloween. Stay safe. And thanks to Mike at Uno Rising Media. If you can leave me a review, that would help everybody find the podcast. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.